I'm going to share with you today some of the editing mindset that I use and some workflow in Reaper using stretch markers. More often than not, you will be working with musicians that are not just on time. Sometimes that happens, that's fine. Not everyone is a super professional and not everyone has the super timing that we wish. But we love this and we're happy to help. Straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and let's talk a bit about some editing mindset and how can we do this within Reaper. A small announcement is I'm trying a new layout and color thing on Reaper, so let me know if this works for you, because one of my main objectives is for it to be clear for you. So if it's not, please let me know and I'll change it back to the usual. And this time I will be using a multi-track that was recorded by one of my students, and it will have some things going on, and let's try to listen and figure out what is every mic purpose and if you should even use it in the mix. That's one of the first things that you should think when you're editing something. How many things are actually helping the sound and helping the idea of what we are trying to do? Let's listen to it, and please remember that everyone is always at a certain stage within their own musicianship, and let's be kind to each other. So when I opened the session, it sounded something like this. You more or less get the idea of what's going on. So that's what happened. And as you can tell, they're a bit off the click and a little bit off the grid. I don't mind being when they play it off the grid, but it's really intentional. When you're editing drums inside Reaper, I might suggest that you start with drums and bass together because they usually work really close to each other. I've been using a lot the lock height action that I have on the top of my toolbar, so I can no longer change the size of my tracks and I can only concentrate on what's actually useful. And if this was the whole song, my mindset is I want to first be sure that whenever they are transitioning into a new section of the song, into a new verse, into a new chorus, into a bridge or whatever, I want them all to land together because that's one of the moments that I think it's special when you're moving from one place of the song to another. So I have this way of thinking editing where I'm just narrowing down or going deeper into the editing as long as it's even needed, not before that. So you heard this, and this does need some editing. Let's start there. First, I'm going to group all of my media items and I'm going to press G on my keyboard and I'm going to drag a little bit this to the left so my kick drum is actually landing on the first bar here. I have two different shortcuts because sometimes I want it over my mouse position and sometimes I want it at my marker cursor position. It works differently because if you're using the tap to transient fill like they do it on Pro Tools, you can look for the action move cursor to next transient in items and you can edit the sensitivity of this inside the dynamic split items menu. Here you can change this transient sensitivity and this action will be related to this sensitivity and this threshold. So if you want to change the way it behaves, you have to go there. So after I moved all of my items together, I'm going to lock them vertically. Remember that I have this action on the top of my toolbar, toggle left right item locking mode. That usually should be here, but I'm using it in a new place within my toolbars. After that, I'm going to ungroup all of my media items with Option G, or using the action remove items from group, so I can start fiddling with one or the other much better. So I'm going to set up my cursor here, hit tab once, and use my shortcut for the stretch marker at cursor position, that's Command-Shift-S. And this is going to be my starting point of my bar. I don't have to have my items grouped because I'm using the grouping tracks option where I'm working with the media razor edit lead and media razor edit follow. Which tracks I have grouped? Well, every single track that you see right here on the left, okay? So I don't have to worry because if this is on, whenever I move my kick drum, the snare follows And let's try bringing them up one by one, and let's see if they benefit the sound of what we have or if they mess it up completely. The hard drum should be panned in the center, so I think it's adding a bit of something, but maybe not too much. Let me try the side mic. This one should be panned left in the case that my hi-hat is panned right, as I heard on my overheads. I don't know. Okay, let's listen to the room mics. They are panned, hard panned left and right. I think they're close enough so I get like this double hit from the drums. This probably isn't a really big room, and I'd rather fix it with the chain that I have here, like just adding some extra reverb and trying to hide the transient a bit. Now let's add this other mic, the main kit mic. This one adds the most to the kick drum, so maybe I would use it. So once you figure out what they're adding and which ones will you be using, you can close again your mixer. And now let's start editing, like in the proper sense of let's make things match wherever they need to match time-wise. With the action, that's more or less like the tap to transient on Pro Tools that I have assigned to my tab key, and it's move cursor to the next transient in items. I'm going to start adding that. I also have it in the mouse position. I'll also leave it in the description as usual. So I could add it wherever my mouse is. These, remember, are the stretch markers, or I could only add them to the transient. So I'm going to add it just to the kick drums because those are usually in the 1 and 3. And for this is like a really straightforward kind of genre. So I'm going to make the section, like the whole loop fit. I'm looking for the last kick drum, and it's this one, and I already have this transient marker. So I'm going to make this one fit properly within the grid. So whenever I drag only one of them, all of them will move together, see? So I'm going to make them fit properly into the grid, and that's going to be all of my loop. I'm going to go all the way into there, and then I'm going to start dividing by 2 by 2 by 2 as I see fit. So I'm going to listen with a click, how does it fit in the middle of the section? I'm sorry, I like to listen loud to the click, so please take that into account. Okay, so they are hitting a little bit early, so let's make that fit. I'm going to use the tap to transient, I'm going to add this, I'm going to activate my grid again, and I'm going to pull this into here, and I'm going to listen again. I'm also going to mute the mic because if you have way too many things going on, you're probably going to get crazy. I'm also going to mute the bass, so I am only dealing with the drums and the click right now. That sounds better, and I'm going to go again to the middle of this. It could be a bit tighter, so let me tighten it up a bit. And if you see I'm not like ultra summing in, I'm just like making small adjustments that are going to benefit the whole section, because the way the musicians breathe between the sections, between the bars, that's going to actually help me a lot to keep the clip alive and not like just forcing it into the grid. Okay, so that should be sounding better. So I'm going to pull the bass all the way to the top, and there's a reason for this. Usually, kick drum and bass work together. So I'm going to just try to figure out what parts are a little bit behind, which parts are a little bit ahead. So I'm going to set up my stretch markers, as I told you, my first stretch marker, my last stretch marker, and I'm going to make it land properly within the grid. And I'm going to stretch the beginning of this. I'm going to give it a little bit more space, so this isn't an issue. If you want to delete a stretch marker, you can just leave Option, press and left click, and then you can go like this, and then you can go back into this. This time I'm only trying to make a loop, so I don't really mind cutting off a little bit of the beginning of it. And just as before, I'm going to look for the middle of the loop. That's going to be bar 17. And as you can see, the bass is fluctuating a bit in time. So I'm going to pull it a little bit closer to the kick drum, and I'm going to listen again and start making adjustments more or less on the fly. If you don't want to do this by hand, I'm handling the grid using different shortcuts within my keyboard. So I assign them like this because it's an Ableton Live kind of thing. So I'm toggling the grid lines on and off with Command 4. I'm making them narrower or wider with Command 1 and Command 2. And you can just take a screenshot of this if you want to. But find a way to handle the grid without having to right click a lot, because when you're editing, you're going to lose a lot of time. So I'm going to set a marker right in the middle. I'm going to make my grid a little bit bigger. I'm going to go all the way to here, and I'm going to go to most of the biggest tempo parts. And I'm going to look for the closest hits in that place without having to ultra narrow down what's going on. Not yet, because maybe this isn't the project for it. And now within my kick drum and within my bass drum, I'm going to use the action add stretch marker at mouse position, and I'm going to start selecting where I want to place my stretch markers. That's all I'm going to do. So as far as I can see, there are a couple of hits from the bass that do come early, but they are written like that, they are played like that, and that's fine. And I'm going to use this other action, snap stretch markers in time selection to grid, or snap stretch markers to grid, however you're working. So I'm going to just go closely and start maybe handling each section, handling a couple of bars at a time so it doesn't mess everything up. I have the action up here within my switching toolbars available. It's going to go like that. I'm going to listen to it. So you have to be careful because this might happen. So this was pushed further ahead instead of further back. So you could try it like that, and if it doesn't work, I'm sorry, but you have to do it by hand. I'm sorry, but you have to. And you have to start finding the best places for it to actually work. Maybe you just want to do it for one item first. Maybe the drums are a lot closer, and maybe the bass you want to do it by hand. Let me change the color of my bass so it's faster. That sounds a lot better, and I will just keep on grinding it until it feels right. I don't have to really place it on the grid and kill it. You can even try and quantize the stretch markers, and with the SPK77 quantize stretch markers.eel, and just try to make it closer to the grid or further away from the grid. And this also usually works really well. So that's the idea, that's the mindset. This video is long enough, just keep on grinding with it. Let me show you the end result of what I was showing to my student. And remember to try and keep your screen clear and with as much space as possible whenever you don't need the rest of the things. Since all of these tracks are grouped for whatever reason that I may need them, I'm just going to hide all of them that I'm not using. So let's hide all of the extra drums. Let's open up the guitar and the bass drum. Okay, I hope that was useful. This was a long video. It's always hard to try and dedicate some time for editing videos. I will probably end up uploading a little bit more about this. Let me know if it works for you. Let me know if this is a way you might want to work. A lot of people like to use the dynamic split and then place the items within the grid. That's another way of editing. And the last thing that you might not want to forget at all is to check the mode of your items. So for all of my drums, whenever I double click, I go into media item properties, and then I can go into transient optimize. So I'm actually respecting the drums. So you might want to select all of the drums and then go into transient optimized. And for the bass drum and for the bass guitar, you might want to go into tonal optimized and then hit apply. Other than that, in my project settings, my main setup is the stretch marker mode is set up for balance, so I don't listen to something really strange going on just when I'm doing it. So this should be all of the things that you might need to start editing your drums. This is going to get you the sensitivity to work in another dimension of the music that you're working with. It doesn't have to be right on the grid, but sometimes you might want to help the musicians go a little bit better together. The guitars were quite an issue because the phrasing was not right on time and maybe it wasn't like really clear for the guitar players. So that's that. If you like these kind of videos, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that notification bell, and everything that people on YouTube say. And straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and thanks for listening.